Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. I've been working construction since I was 17, mostly earth moving. That means I sit in a cab all day, pushing dirt, ripping up tree stumps, and sometimes carving out the foundation for what'll one day be someone's dream house. I'm not complaining. There's a peace to it. Just me, the hum of the engine, and the scrape of the bucket against the earth. The job site that morning was in the outskirts of a new subdivision, one of those cookie-cutter communities with perfectly planned roads and plots measured down to the inch. It was early spring, still cold enough to see your breath, and most of the other workers hadn't shown up yet. That gave me time to warm up the excavator and get started on the trench for the water line. I remember thinking how quiet everything was. No birds, no wind, just the rumble of my machine as I eased it into gear. That's when I saw the first one. At first, I thought it was just a guy, maybe a jogger or some drifter wandering too close to the site. He was stumbling through the half-cleared woods that bordered the property. No shoes, shirt shredded. His skin looked off, like it had been sitting out in the sun too long, all pale and dry. I set the bucket down and climbed out to yell at him. "Hey, this is an active work site, you can't be here." He didn't stop, just kept coming. I looked around. Still no one else had arrived. The guy was maybe 30 feet away now, limping but fast. Something about the way he moved made the hair stand up on my neck. He was twitching, like every step hurt, or maybe like he couldn't feel it at all. I reached into the cab for my radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 9. Got a trespasser on site, looks like he might be hurt." No answer. I turned back just in time to see the guy break into a full sprint. There was no time to think. I jumped back into the cab, slammed the door shut, and locked it. He hit the side of the excavator so hard the whole thing rocked. His face smashed against the glass, smearing it with something dark and sticky. His eyes were blank, sunken, like there was nothing behind them. I backed the excavator up, and he clung to the side, snarling and thrashing. I don't know what came over me. I swung the arm out wide and knocked him clean off. He hit the dirt hard but didn't stay down. He twitched, rolled over, and started crawling. I didn't wait to see what would happen next. I floored it, tracks grinding against gravel, and headed straight for the gate. When I got to the edge of the site, my phone finally buzzed. Missed calls. A bunch of them. My wife, my foreman, my brother, all within the last 15 minutes. Then came the emergency alert. Shelter in place, lock doors, avoid contact with infected individuals. This is not a drill. I stared at the screen, not wanting to believe it. Infected? What did that even mean? That's when I saw the second one. A woman this time. Her clothes were torn, like she'd been in a car crash. She'd staggered out from behind a parked bulldozer, her mouth open and gasping like she was choking on something. And then she shrieked, a long, broken sound that didn't sound human. I was still gripping my phone when she bolted toward me. My instincts kicked in again. I twisted the controls, raised the bucket, and brought it down between us with a crash of metal and earth. She slammed into it, arms flailing, but couldn't get over. I didn't know what was happening. I just knew I had to get out. The road into the subdivision was blocked. Some kind of crash up ahead, multiple cars. I turned the machine around and took the back path we used for hauling debris. It wasn't paved, but it led into the woods and out toward the main road. As I moved, more figures emerged from the trees. Some were walking. Some were running. All of them were wrong. Eyes glazed. Skin gray. Clothes torn and soaked in something dark. and all of them were coming straight toward me. I'd driven the excavator through some rough terrain before. Mud, rocks, even shallow streams, but never while being chased. The machine wasn't built for speed, just brute force. I kept the bucket low and plowed through the brush, steering around trees and old fence posts. The path was narrow and uneven, but I knew it connected to an old access road the loggers used years back. If I could make it there, I might be able to get far enough away to figure out what was going on. I glanced back. More of them had emerged from the tree line. 5, maybe 10. It was hard to tell with all the movement. One of them was missing an arm. Another dragged something behind him. Maybe a shovel, maybe a pipe. I couldn't tell. They didn't feel pain. That much was clear. I saw one run straight into a thorn bush, tearing skin from their face like it didn't matter. And they were fast. Too fast. I pushed the throttle as far as it would go, the engine groaning in protest. My rig wasn't made for this, but it was the only thing between me and whatever they were. Finally, I hit the clearing, the access road. I broke through the brush and slammed the brakes just in time to avoid toppling into a drainage ditch. I repositioned the tracks and moved on to the gravel path. The woods here were thinner, but that didn't mean I was in the clear. I took the chance to glance at my phone again. Another alert was blinking. Stay indoors. Avoid all contact. Infected are aggressive and extremely dangerous. Law enforcement is overwhelmed. What did they mean by infected? Was this a sickness? Some kind of chemical thing? I thought of those videos online. People talking about secret labs, shady experiments. I used to laugh at that stuff. Now, it didn't seem so funny. The access road wound along a creek and cut under a disused railway bridge. I'd passed it a dozen times before on my way to jobs. It wasn't far from the main road, maybe 2 miles, and I hoped, prayed, someone would be there. As I crept under the bridge, I heard a new sound. Yelling. Human yelling. I killed the engine. For a second, there was only silence. Then the voice came again, closer this time. Help! Somebody! I climbed down from the cab, keeping my foot on the step just in case. The yelling was coming from across the creek. I squinted through the trees and saw a man waving frantically. He looked normal. Blood on his clothes, yeah, but his eyes were clear. He wasn't twitching or snarling, just scared out of his mind. I'm stuck, he shouted. They're everywhere. I scanned the woods, half expecting more of those things to come sprinting out of the brush. Nothing moved yet. I got a machine, I yelled back. You gotta get across. He pointed behind him. They're on the other side, I can't go back. That's when I saw the log jam. Someone, or something, had piled branches and debris across the creek, forming a crude little crossing. I could drive across it. It was risky. The water was high from last week's rain, and the logs looked slick, but I couldn't leave the guy. I got back in, maneuvered toward the jam, and carefully lowered the bucket to act like a stabilizer. The machine groaned as it shifted its weight over the water. One track slipped, and for a second, I thought I was going over. But then I adjusted, and we rolled on to solid ground. The man ran for me as soon as I got across. Thank you. Oh man, thank you. I thought I was... His words cut off as we heard it. A shriek. Not a scream, a shriek, bone-chilling, close. The man's face turned white. They're coming, he whispered. I reached down and hauled him into the cab, slamming the door shut just as the first one appeared from the trees behind us. It was fast, too fast. Hang on, I said, and threw the rig into motion again. We crashed through more brush, trees snapping like twigs as I pushed the excavator toward the logging trail. I didn't know where it led, but it was better than sitting still. Who are you? I asked, as I drove. "Mike," he said, panting. "I'm a surveyor. I was marking new property lines this morning when they came out of nowhere. They took my partner, just tore into him. I didn't ask for details. I didn't want them. You see anyone else?" "No, just them. Dozens. It's like they're everywhere." We sat in silence for a few seconds. The cab bounced as we hit uneven ground. The trail was getting narrow again. "I don't think this is just an accident," he said finally. "This feels planned." I looked at him. "Planned how?" He didn't answer right away, just stared out the window. "I was up on a ridge earlier, checking signal markers. There was a convoy, military, trucks, choppers, way out past the tree line, like they knew something was coming." My stomach twisted. The alert on my phone hadn't said anything about help coming. Just shelter in place. Just avoid the infected. No rescue, no plan. Just survive. We followed the logging trail until it ended at a rusted-out gate, half swallowed by vines. Beyond it was an old farm, looked abandoned. The paint was peeling off the barn. The silo had a huge crack running down its side, and the house was boarded up like someone had tried to keep something out or in. I didn't like it, but the machine was running low on fuel, and we needed a place to regroup. The sky was darkening, clouds rolling in thick and fast. If we were going to survive the night, we needed cover. The barn looked like the best option. I rolled the excavator up to the edge of the field and parked it behind a hay shed. Then Mike and I crept toward the barn, stepping carefully over broken boards and tall weeds. "Let me check it first," I said, pulling a crowbar from the cab. I didn't have much else to defend us with, but the weight of it felt reassuring in my hand. The barn door creaked as I pushed it open. Inside, it was dark, streaks of light coming through the gaps in the old wood, illuminating floating dust and spider webs. The air smelled like mold, old straw, and something else, something sharp and sour. I moved cautiously, stepping around rusted equipment and empty feed bags. Then I heard it, a soft scrape, like a boot dragging across wood. I froze. "Mike," I whispered, "stay out there." Too late. He stepped inside behind me, just as a low growl echoed from the loft above. We both looked up. A figure crouched near the edge, watching us. Its head cocked at an unnatural angle. The shadows hid most of its face, but I could see the pale glint of eyes. Not empty like the others. This one was aware. "Get back," I whispered, raising the crowbar. But the thing didn't jump. It stood. Slowly, deliberately. It was tall, gaunt, its clothes were shredded military fatigues, and in its hand it held a piece of rebar sharpened to a point. Mike swore under his breath. "Is it one of them?" he asked. I didn't know how to answer. The thing didn't charge. It climbed down the loft ladder like it had full control of its limbs. Its breathing was loud, wet. Every step was slow, deliberate. It was watching us. "Back outside," I said, guiding Mike with one hand while keeping the other on the crowbar. "Now." We reached the threshold of the barn just as the thing reached the floor. It stopped and smiled. I slammed the door shut and jammed the crowbar through the handles. Then we ran. Not back to the excavator, not yet. If that thing followed us, it'd trap us inside the cab. We needed higher ground. Somewhere we could see it coming. The silo. We sprinted through the weeds and up the rusted ladder on its side, climbing fast, heart pounding. From the top, we had a clear view of the barn. The door rattled once, twice, then silence. Mike was shaking. "What was that?" "I don't know," I said, "but it wasn't like the others." He wiped his face. "That was military gear. You saw that, right?" I nodded. You think? They tried to stop it and they got infected? Maybe. But that thing, it wasn't mindless. It looked at us. It thought. He was right. The others chased and tore like wild animals. This one stalked us, and it smiled. We stayed in the silo until the sun dipped below the horizon. The sky turned from gray to black, and the cold started to seep in. Somewhere in the trees, something shrieked again, but not from the barn. This came from the direction of the house. We turned and looked. A light had turned on inside. Just one, flickering through a cracked second-story window. Mike and I exchanged glances. I thought the house was abandoned, he said. Maybe it's not, I replied. We didn't want to go. Every bone in my body told me to stay put, ride it out until morning. But if someone was inside, someone who knew what was going on, we had to find out. We climbed down. The field was silent now, even the wind had died. We passed the excavator again. Still intact, still our only way out if things went south. The house was locked up tight. Boards over the windows, chains across the front door. But the side entrance, an old cellar door, was open, just slightly. Just enough to say, "Come on in." We looked at each other one last time. Then we went inside. The cellar door groaned as we pulled it open, revealing a steep set of wooden stairs that vanished into the dark. The air that came up from below was cold, unnaturally so, and it carried the same sharp, sour smell we'd noticed in the barn. I turned on my flashlight and aimed it down. The beam caught dust dancing in the air, old stone walls and the glint of something metallic near the bottom. A generator, maybe, or shelves full of tools. Mike hesitated behind me. "This feels wrong." "Yeah," I said, "but we need answers." We descended slowly, our boots creaking on the steps. The deeper we went, the quieter it got. Even our breathing seemed muffled, like the air was too thick to carry sound. At the bottom, the cellar opened into a wide space, larger than we expected. The walls were reinforced with steel beams, and the floor was lined with mismatched tiles. An old workbench stood against the far wall, cluttered with papers, vials, and broken electronics. In the center of the room was a chair bolted to the floor, and above it, hanging by chains, was a surgical light. This wasn't just a cellar. It was a lab. Mike stepped toward the workbench. Someone was running experiments down here. On what? I asked, my voice low. He picked up one of the papers, squinting at the scribbled handwriting. Something about accelerated tissue growth, nerve conductivity, enhanced aggression. I shined the flashlight on the other side of the room and froze. There were cages, 6 of them, stacked too high, all empty, except one. A girl sat inside, hugging her knees. Her eyes were wide, skin pale, hair matted to her face. She couldn't have been more than 15. She blinked into the light and raised one trembling hand. "Please," she whispered, "don't leave me down here." Mike rushed over and yanked on the cage door. Locked. "Who did this to you?" She shook her head. "I don't know. They wore suits. Masks. They talked about stages. Said I was stage 3, then they left me." My stomach turned. Stage 3 of what? She didn't answer. Because behind us, something creaked. We turned. At the top of the stairs, silhouetted in the cellar doorway, stood the figure from the barn. It had followed us. Its hand rested on the railing. Its head tilted slowly, unnaturally, like it was savoring the moment. Mike grabbed a metal rod from the floor and took a step toward it. "Run," he said to me. I shook my head. We stayed together. The thing descended the steps, one at a time. No rush, no sound. Then the girl began to scream. Not out of fear, out of recognition. "It's him!" she shrieked. He's the one. He did this." Mike turned to her. "You know him?" She nodded violently. "He used to talk to the others. Said we were progress. Said pain was part of the change." The thing reached the last step and smiled again. But this time, something was different. It spoke. "You weren't supposed to survive." Its voice was hollow, stretched like it hadn't spoken in a long time. "You should have burned with the others." I raised the crowbar and stepped forward. "Who are you?" It didn't answer. It lunged. Mike swung the metal rod, connecting with its shoulder. The impact barely fazed it. It backhanded him across the room. He crashed into the cages, groaning. I swung the crowbar down, aiming for its head. It caught it, with one hand. The strength was unreal. It twisted the crowbar out of my grip and threw it across the room. Then it grabbed me by the throat. The pressure built instantly, like a vice clamped around my neck. My vision blurred, stars blooming in the corners of my eyes. Then the girl screamed again, but not words, a sound, high-pitched, piercing. The thing paused and backed away, clutching its head. I dropped to the floor, gasping. The girl was still screaming. Her eyes glowed faintly in the flashlight beam, like something inside her had changed. The thing staggered back up the stairs and disappeared into the night. We stared at her, stunned. She looked down at her hands, breathing hard. I don't know how I did that. Mike helped me to my feet. "We need to get out of here, now." We broke the lock on her cage and helped her climb out. She was weak, but walking. As we passed the workbench, I grabbed the papers, stuffing them into my jacket. Maybe someone would know what they meant. Maybe someone could stop this. We climbed out of the cellar and into the night. But we weren't alone. Across the field, more figures had emerged from the trees. Dozens of them, all watching, all waiting. And one of them, taller than the rest, held something in its hand. A remote. It lifted it slowly and clicked. The sound of that click echoed like thunder across the field. Then, all at once, every figure moved. Not a slow stagger like before, this was coordinated, swift, tactical. Mike grabbed the girl's hand. "Run!" We sprinted toward the excavator. My chest burned, my legs screamed, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. That machine was the only thing heavy enough, strong enough to clear a path through what was coming. The girl stumbled once. I caught her under the arm and hoisted her up. Mike swung a broken shovel handle like a staff, knocking two of them back just long enough for us to reach the excavator. I scrambled into the cab and hit the ignition. It turned over with a deep whoomp of diesel. Thank whatever force kept that battery alive. Mike and the girl clambered up behind me, bracing themselves against the back of the cab. I didn't wait for a plan. I slammed the arm down and swung the bucket wide. The first wave of them reached us, clawing at the tracks, swarming like insects. I dropped the arm. The bucket crashed down with a sickening crunch, scattering the front line. Then I rotated the cab, swept the arm, and sent 5 more tumbling into the dirt. Mike was yelling something, but I couldn't hear him. Too much roaring engine and screaming from all directions. The girl pressed her face to the glass, watching with wide, terrified eyes. "This isn't random," I said aloud, more to myself than anyone. "They're not just infected, they're controlled." Mike banged on the roof. That one's still out there, the one with the remote. I scanned the field. There, standing on a rusted water tower at the edge of the property. The same figure from the barn and cellar. The same tattered fatigues. It was watching us. Calm. Still. And then it raised its arm again and pressed the remote again. Something shifted in the air, and the others stopped. Just stopped moving. Even the ones crawling toward the excavator froze in place. heads twitching like they were listening to some distant voice. The light on the remote flickered red. Then all of them turned, away from us, and ran. Not shuffled, ran. Toward the woods, toward the town. Mike's voice cracked. "They're not after us anymore. They're going for the others." The girl gripped my shoulder. "We have to warn them." I nodded and shoved the lever forward. The excavator lurched across the field, bouncing over rocks and torn earth. I aimed for the main road beyond the barn. As we reached the gate, the girl tapped my arm again. "Wait, go back to the house," she said. "There's something you need to see." I hesitated. We didn't have time, but the look in her eyes. She knew something. I turned the machine and rolled us around to the front of the house. She jumped down and ran to the porch, pried up a loose floorboard, and pulled out a black binder, sealed in plastic. It had a red symbol stamped on the front, a circle with 7 lines crossing through it like a shattered web. She handed it to me. This is what they were doing. All of it. They called it Directive 7. The stages, the mutations, the command links. It's all in here. Mike flipped it open. Photos, maps, handwritten reports, body scans, experiment logs, even names. Lots of names. Some crossed out, some not. And all of it connected to military research stations scattered across the country. "I think this was one of them," she said. "A field test site. They called me a live sample." They didn't expect me to resist. She looked down at her hands. But I did. I stared at the binder. This wasn't an outbreak. It was a project. Someone had turned people into weapons. And now those weapons were being deployed. The roar of engines caught our attention. A convoy of trucks appeared on the horizon, kicking up clouds of dust. Black, unmarked, no flags, no numbers, just steel and tinted glass. "Get in," I told her, "now." She climbed into the cab and I backed the excavator into the trees, using the underbrush to hide the bulk of the machine. We watched as the truck stopped in front of the house. Men in black suits and body armor spilled out. They moved fast, efficient, like they'd done this before. One of them held a flamethrower. Another carried a canister marked with the same red symbol. They went straight into the barn and house. Minutes later, smoke began rising. Then fire. The structures went up fast, too fast. Accelerants. They weren't salvaging anything. They were erasing it. Mike looked down at the binder. "They know we took it." The girl's voice was quiet. "They'll never stop." He looked at me. I looked at the road. We couldn't go back to town, not yet. Not until we figured out what to do with what we knew. I gunned the engine and turned the excavator toward the hills. We disappeared into the trees. Behind us, the farm burned. And ahead of us, the truth waited. We followed an old logging trail into the hills, the excavator groaning with each bump and rut. I didn't know where we were headed, only that we needed time to think, to breathe, to plan. Mike rode on the side, one hand gripping a rail, the other holding the binder like it was the last sacred relic on earth. The girl, Mara, she said her name was, sat beside me, staring blankly ahead. "Directive 7, she muttered. "It started years ago." I glanced over. "You remember more?" She nodded slowly. "They wiped most of it, but bits are coming back. They said the infection wasn't a virus, it was a reprogramming tool, a way to turn people into something else. Not just faster, not just stronger, but obedient." Mike flipped a few pages. "Here. Stage 4, neural integration achieved. Subjects respond to remote commands at 94% reliability. Group intelligence increasing." I pulled the machine to a stop at the edge of a ridge. Below us, nestled in the valley, was an abandoned mining camp. Rusted trailers, rotted timbers, collapsed shacks. Perfect for hiding. We set up a crude camp inside the largest trailer. It stank of mold and old oil, but it had 4 walls, a roof, and a generator that still sputtered to life after a few pulls. Inside, we spread the binder across a table and pored over the documents by lantern light. What we found was worse than we expected. There were schedules, dates, targets, phases. The outbreak that had started this morning, it wasn't spontaneous. It was scheduled, and the next city was marked for midnight. Mike rubbed his face. They're using the infected as weapons, softening targets, then sweeping in to take control once the panic starts. Mara pointed to a map. Here, Facility E9. That's the place they took me after I was first infected. I remember the fences, the sirens. It's only 30 miles from here. I leaned over. What's there? A main relay, she said. The signal that tells the infected what to do, where to go. Without it. She didn't finish the sentence. Mike did. They'll scatter, turn on each other, go feral. We looked at one another. Then we looked at the binder. We had one shot. No backup, no plan. Just an excavator, some stolen intel, and 3 people who were never meant to survive the first 12 hours. We hit the road at dusk, this time in an old pickup we found in the mine's garage. Rusty, but it ran. I sat behind the wheel. Mara rode shotgun. Mike sat in the bed with a scoped rifle and the binder tucked under his arm. Facility E9 wasn't marked on any GPS, but the binder's coordinates were clear. We reached it by nightfall. It was tucked deep in the forest, a concrete blockhouse surrounded by chain-link fence and silent towers. No signs, no lights. Just a single garage door half open, cables snaking out like veins. The place was humming. Literally. A low-frequency vibration in the air, barely audible but constant. It made your teeth itch. That's the signal, Mara said, clutching her head. We parked in the trees and crept closer. No guards, no patrols. Because they didn't need them. Inside, the infected were plugged into machines. Rows of them, suspended in fluid tanks, twitching under strobe lights. Monitors lined the walls, scrolling with data. One massive console stood in the center, surrounded by cables and blinking green lights. The relay, Mike said. We approached the console. It looked like it had been built from scavenged tech. Military, medical, industrial. At its heart was a black box with a red light blinking steadily. Mara reached for it. "Are you sure?" I asked. She nodded. "If we don't stop this, they'll send another wave tomorrow, and another the day after that. No one's coming to save us." She flipped the panel open. Dozens of wires. "I need a minute," she said. Suddenly, a voice echoed from the far corner. "You won't survive this." We spun around. The same figure from the barn, the one with the remote, but this time, no mask, no illusion. Just a man, maybe once military, now half machine. Metal braced his arms and jaw. His eyes glowed faintly red. "You made it far," he said. "But this is where it ends." He stepped forward. Mike raised the rifle and fired. The bullet struck center mass, but the man didn't fall. He laughed and charged. I grabbed a metal rod and met him halfway. Sparks flew as he knocked it aside. We struggled, his strength unreal. But I kept him off Mara just long enough. She yanked the final wire. The red light blinked once, then turned blue, then off. The hum stopped. Everything went still. The man paused. His body twitched. Then he collapsed, limbs locking up, eyes fading. Outside, a distant howl echoed through the woods. followed by silence. Real silence. We burned the facility before we left. Every wire, every tank, gone. The next morning, we stood on the ridge again and watched the horizon. Smoke still curled from towns we couldn't reach, but the swarm was gone. Scattered. Disoriented. Free, maybe. Or lost. I looked at Mara and Mike. We'd survived the first 12 hours. Now, we had to survive the truth. That the real danger wasn't the infected. It was the people who made them. And whatever came next, we wouldn't be hiding from it. We'd be hunting it. Together. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.